Hey guys, my name is Matimeo, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the format out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Pixel Noob, and it is, I hate the new spring patch, and for a lot of my friends, it has ruined Battlefield 4. What are your thoughts on the recent patch? I have heard a lot of these complaints over the last couple of days, and the main one I hear is that they're making Battlefield more casual. And while I can understand a couple of them, like I don't understand why they had to go and nerf the SRA to the point that they did. I don't understand why the attack jet was nerfed as hard as it was. There's a couple things that I do agree upon, but I guess I don't see these complaints or see these worries that all of a sudden Battlefield 4 has become the ultimate casual game and DICE is trying to cater to more of the casual gamer and trying to hurt the people that have been here since the very beginning. One thing I love about the update is that they finally made the slower RPM weapons a little bit more viable on the battlefield. I know that people are upset that they nerfed their favorite gun, like the AEK, they've nerfed the FAMAS, they've nerfed the higher RPM guns in their bullet spread, or at least in that department, and some of them have a little bit more recoil that they're going to have to deal with. But before this patch, let's be completely honest, these higher RPM assault rifles, light machine guns, they were the dominant weapons on the battlefield because if you could reel in the recoil, this is especially prevalent on PC, I'm sure it's pretty obvious on console as well, because they just simply have a higher damage output, as long as you were able to reel in the recoil, you had no problem taking people out at medium to long range. There really wasn't a lot of incentive to use something like the SAR-21, these really slow rate of fire light machine guns, because you didn't have the damage output, and as long as you could reel in the recoil on the higher RPM guns, they were just a better pick overall. And so what they've done now in the patch, and something that I really like, is that now weapons have strengths and weaknesses. If you want to use a high rate of fire, high killing potential assault rifle, you can do that, but you're now going to have to use it in the right circumstance. It's not going to be the gun that does amazing in every single type of combat situation. Here, I'm running around with the FAMAS. I'm trying to get up and close, I'm trying to get personal, and as soon as I try to take someone out at a distance, I can still kill them if I'm patient with my shots, and as long as I'm able to reel in the recoil, it's still possible, but I could tell that I was at a disadvantage. On the flip side though, if I use, let's say, the new LSAT, the LSAT is amazing right now, by the way. I highly recommend that you give it a try. It doesn't do as well up close, but it has that accuracy and it has very low bullet deviation that you can absolutely dominate people at medium to long range. They now have strengths and weaknesses, and I think that is a good thing. I think the biggest really complaints that comes down to is that the SRA got nerfed and there was the nerf to the attack jet. I can understand those complaints. I mean, clearly I can understand the complaints. I love the SRA. I'm really disappointed that they nerfed it, but I don't think that that has absolutely ruined the game. A lot of people hate change. When you've been playing Battlefield, you've been playing it for months in the current build, and they change something drastically, which they've done in the spring patch. There's been a lot of sweeping changes. Your favorite guns have been tweaked. I can understand why that would be a little upsetting, but I think after the next couple of weeks, hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers because I can't verify this, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, things start to settle down. People start to realize, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna have to play a little bit differently. I'm gonna have to use the weapon in the right circumstance, and in general, this has been a good update. Who knows, maybe I'll be eating my words, I'll be completely wrong, but I'm loving the netcode changes, the netcode improvements have been nice. I'm liking that the long-range weapons have a place on the battlefield now. I like that difference, and so hopefully everything will pan out in the end, and it won't be the atrocity that a lot of people are making it out to be. The next question comes from Garrett, and it is, how would you feel about DICE taking away the rooftop access on maps like Zavad and Lane King Dam? I play a lot of TDM, and I personally feel like it makes the game much more boring. I would not be opposed to that whatsoever. Don't get your hopes up because I don't think that's ever going to happen in Battlefield 4. They've pretty much become part of the map now. Everyone knows to look on the rooftops when they're playing on Lane King Dam and Zavad. Everyone knows that it's going to be pretty crazy on Dawnbreaker and Siege of Shanghai and that they should look up every once in a while. But I really wish it wasn't as prevalent as it is in Battlefield 4. Verticality, if done correctly, can add in some really interesting tactical elements. The best example that I can think of is Strike at Karkin. If you guys remember that map, there's like a couple of rooftops that you can actually access, especially the one that's around the B capture point if you're playing Conquest, and that's really the only one that has an overwatch of a bunch of the lanes. Everyone knows that spot though, and because it's only like 1 or 2 areas that an enemy sniper can get onto, you're gonna look out for it. But then you move on over into something like Dawnbreaker, and every goddamn rooftop and ledge can be a sniper perch, and it makes it impossible for you to check all of your corners. It makes it impossible for you to run out in the open feeling at least somewhat comfortable that you're not gonna get shot at. And in my opinion, that really, really detracts from the gameplay. One of the biggest reasons that I think this is an issue is the way that they designed getting onto the rooftops. Normally there's only like 1 or 2 ways to access it, and they're right next to each other. Hanan Resort is the worst offender of this game design. You know, if you try to access the rooftop to clear off everyone that's up there because you want to make sure that that central capture point is secured for your team, you know you have to go up through one of the elevators. There's no other way to do that. And because they're situated directly next to each other, this makes it easy for one support player, only one player, to camp up there with C4 and detonate it as soon as they open. There's nothing you can do as a player to avoid that. There's absolutely nothing you can do to combat that, because as soon as the door is open, you're dead. They can even be around the corner. They can just literally listen for the door opening and take you out. It is infuriating. And so what I would really like DICE to do, maybe in their next Battlefield game, is you can have verticality, but at least make it accessible and not a nightmare to take out the people that are on top of the rooftops. Push away the elevators. Maybe have one elevator on one side of the roof and the other on the other. Have maybe a ladder on one angle of it. So there's 3 access points. Only having basically one route to get up there leads to camping, it leads to frustration, and in my opinion, it's really bad game design. I realize that it's not gonna happen for Battlefield 4. That is very wishful thinking. I don't think that DICE is gonna eliminate all of the rooftops in the game. Like, they're not gonna do that. But I think in the next Battlefield game, first of all, just limit the amount of roofs that there are. You can have verticality. I think verticality is a good thing in a first-person shooter. It mixes it up. You have to think about your tactics a little bit differently. But if you have another Dawnbreaker where it's literally just sniper heaven, I feel like you pushed it a little bit too far. And then if you do have rooftops, make sure that there are multiple access points that aren't directly next to each other so that someone can't just camp it and secure it for their team the entire round. That's just my 2 cents though. The next question comes from Diogo, and it is, what do you think if DICE decided to add a slide mechanic in Battlefield 4 or a future Battlefield game? The player could hold a button while sprinting. It would bring a new tactical approach to firefights and getting out of hairy situations. What are your thoughts? I've never been much of a fan of sliding in first-person shooters. There's been some good games out there that have done it well, and I don't think it ruins it. Crysis comes to mind. Warface, actually, I take that back. Warface really isn't all that great, and the sliding's pretty stupid. But Crysis was a good game. There has been some solid titles out there that have implemented this mechanic well, but I think it lends itself more to an arcadey playstyle, and maybe it's just me, but I'm not opposed to having arcadey aspects in Battlefield, but I just don't think it fits Battlefield 4 or a future Battlefield game. I realize that Battlefield has become more and more arcadey over the years. I mean, sure, there's a lot of authentic and realistic elements to it. DICE always tries to make their games feel authentic, and I love that about the series, but when we get down to it, there is arcadey aspects. It feels like a video game because it is a video game. It's not gonna be a 100% realism, and I think that is a good thing. And maybe it's just because I don't like the sliding mechanic, and I feel like this is more apt for like Call of Duty with drop shotting, Crysis, their sliding mechanic, but I've just never been a fan of it in those games, and I just don't think that it would fit well in Battlefield. Maybe a lot of you guys will disagree with me. Maybe you think I'm completely off my rocker and you think this is the best idea ever, and so I'd like to get your guys' take on this. Do you like the concept of having some way of sliding into cover? Do you like the idea of sliding and going to hip fire and taking people down? Because while it sounds cool, I mean, it's very interesting, I think it does push the game in more of an arcadey route. I don't think it would ruin it by any means, but I guess I'm just not really a fan of the concept overall. The next question is, what do you think if they bring back the Battlefield 3 damage model of the DMRs and put them into Battlefield 4? If DICE decided to do this, I would be very surprised by that, and it comes down for a couple of reasons. The biggest reason is that all of the weapons in Battlefield 4, every single weapon, doesn't hit as hard as the weapons do in Battlefield 3. And so if they all of a sudden make the DMRs do a 2-shot kill up close and a 1-shot headshot, that would be ridiculously powerful. I don't know if it would be flat out overpowered, but then we get on over to my second reason, and that is these are an all-kit weapon. They weren't an all-kit weapon back in Battlefield 3. It was perfect for the recon. It was perfect as a recon-only weapon because, yeah, they should have at least some way of doing well up close, and this was their way of going about it. If you wanted to have a marksman weapon that was amazing in close encounter combat, or at least did reasonably well if you were able to get a headshot, then the DMRs were right up your alley. It wasn't overpowered because you had to deal with assault rifles like the M16A3, but if you knew what you were doing, they were a competent gun and they were on par. But now that they're an all-kit class gun, we wouldn't want them to be the best pick in the game. We wouldn't want them to be flat out fantastic, because then you know everyone would start to use that on the battlefield for every single class, and that's something you want to avoid. And so while it's a very interesting prospect, I know that many people adored the DMRs back in Battlefield 3, I don't see DICE actually going through with it because of those two reasons. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. I am finally back from my little trip. That's the reason why Sunday Mailbox was delayed to Monday. I apologize about that, but I am finally back and working on videos. As always, if you would like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, have a good one and take it easy.